Chapter 6. When the road turns without warning. A chapter of loss, awakening, and the long journey back to myself. Introduction. There are chapters in a man's life that do not arrive gently. They do not knock softly or wait for permission. They break the door open, rearrange your future, and force your soul into places it never planned to go. Chapter 6 is that chapter for me. It begins with hope, a new job, a new life in Secunda, a young marriage held together by love, dreams, and routines that felt safe. It begins with the innocence of a man who believed he still had time to figure out who he was, time to build a family, time to walk slowly toward the future. But life does not measure time the way we do. In this chapter, the road turns sharply, without warning, without mercy. It turns on a dark Northern Cape highway, in a roll of metal and glass. It turns in a hospital bed where silence feels heavier than pain. It turns at a funeral where I lay flat, unable to stand beside the coffin of the woman I loved. It turns in a Secunda house filled with her footsteps, her perfume, her handwriting. It turns again in a moment of despair where I almost followed her into the darkness. And then, slowly, quietly, it turns towards something else. Forgiveness, grace, fatherhood, purpose, a new beginning I never expected. This chapter is not about tragedy. It is about transformation, the kind that only comes when life burns everything to the ground and asks you to rebuild with nothing but your bare hands and a trembling heart. This is the chapter where the boy I had been could no longer survive. This is where the man began. A new road, a new life. Leaving the Air Force, finding Secunda, and the beginning of becoming Marina. Cooney told me I would find crowds outside Sasol's main gate, but nothing prepared me for what I saw. When I stepped out of the bakkie, I walked straight into a sea of people. Cars, trucks, bakkies, taxis, and men, hundreds of men. Some in dirty overalls, some in clean shirts clutching documents, others with nothing but hope and a lunch tin. The air buzzed with voices and dust, a restless energy of men who needed work more than they needed comfort. Floor construction, Coney had said. They pay the best. Try there. I found the sign, and my heart sank. The queue was endless, a long, coiling snake of desperation and determination. I joined the very back. In that moment the truth hit me hard. I was no longer a corporal. No one stepped aside. I was just another man in a long line of men trying to build a future. I stared ahead, lost in my thoughts, when a quiet voice beside me said, "Sir, I can do electrical work. My name is Jacob." He stood nervously, cap between his fingers, eyes searching my face as if I held the key to something. I looked at the sign above the office door. Electrical workers only. No mention of instrumentation, and I knew absolutely nothing about industrial electrical work, but I needed a job. I needed to earn. I needed to start building a life for Mariana and me. "Jacob," I asked softly, "you know electrical work well?" "Yes, sir," he said without hesitation. "And if I tell them we're a team, will you teach me?" He paused only for a second, then nodded. "Yes, sir, I will teach you." Something shifted inside me, something deeper than survival or ambition. For the first time, I didn't just see Jacob as another applicant in a queue. I saw a man with the same fears I carried, a man also trying to feed a family, a man praying for a break. And I made a silent promise to myself. In my world, every person would be equal. No ranks, no levels, no hierarchy of worth. Respect would be the foundation. 3 hours to a new future. After 3 long, blistering hours in the sun, we finally reached the small metal office. Inside, an irritated man sat behind a desk with crooked glasses and stubble he didn't bother shaving. "Trade?" he barked. "Electrical," I replied, steady. "Years?" "4 in the Air Force." He scribbled something on the form, told me the rate, the site, the shift start, and then snapped. "Next!" But I didn't move. "Sir, one favour. Jacob came with me. He's very skilled. You won't find better." He glared. Don't waste my time. There's a long line outside. Please, sir, I said firmly. He deserves a chance. I saw something shift in the man's eyes. Maybe irritation, maybe respect. Maybe he just wanted me out his office. He waved sharply. Call him. Jacob stepped in, hat in his hands, shoulders tense. You work with him, the man said, pointing at me. Jacob's whole face softened. Relief, gratitude, hope. From that moment, we became a team. Jacob taught me everything. Wiring, conduit, bends, layouts. After my first Friday payday, I bought him a curved pipe and a small pouch of chewing tobacco. He would take a slow draw, exhale through his nose, and that gentle smile of his would appear. Thank you, sir, he'd say quietly. Jacob, I said every time, I'm not sir, I'm Chris. He would laugh gently. Thank you, Morena. That became my name among many black workers, a name that would follow me for the rest of my life. A twist of fate. About 4 months later, Jacob and I were working inside a plant when a man walked toward me, staring hard. Don't I know you? He asked. I looked at him properly. Uncle Gwenther. He blinked. How do you know my name? Uncle. I cut your lawn in primary school. I saved money from your garden to buy my rally bike. The one that was in your garage. A wide smile spread across his face and he shook my hand warmly. We spoke for a long time about my Air Force days, Secunda, contracting, trying to build a life. He listened carefully, then said something that would change everything. I'm a senior engineer at Sasol now. You should apply here. You have discipline. You have potential. Become an industrial instrumentation tradesman. Build a career. And come stay with us. Trudy and I have an outside room you can use until you get a Sasol house. 2 weeks later, I resigned from Floor. I moved into their outside room, and I started my journey at Sasol. And a month after I joined Sasol, Jacob came too. 2 men who met in a queue, now walking the same new road together inside one of the biggest industrial complexes in South Africa.
Reflection, the seeds of a new self. There are moments in life when the road you step onto does more than change your direction. It changes you. This story is one of those moments. Standing in that hiring queue, stripped of rank and identity, you met your first great teacher outside the Air Force, humility. Not the kind that weakens a man, but the kind that breaks open the heart. Jacob entered your life as a stranger, yet he awakened the part of you that would later become fundamental to your leadership, your coaching, your purpose. People deserve dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from. This story reveals 3 powerful truths about your growth. 1. Equality was not a concept. It became a commitment. When you chose to stand beside Jacob, defend him, uplift him, and treat him as your equal, something inside you aligned. That moment foreshadowed your future identity, the man others would call Morena, the one who sees worth in every person. 2. Humility opens doors. Rank never could. In the Air Force, you had rank. In Secunda, you had nothing. Yet the decision to learn from Jacob, a man many would have overlooked, built the foundation for your entire future career. Humility became your new uniform. 3. Fate helps those who keep moving. The encounter with Uncle Gwenther was not coincidence. It was alignment. It was life rewarding your courage to step into the unknown, your willingness to grow, your decision to trust people, and it became the turning point from contract work to a real career. What this story quietly teaches, deep beneath the events, this story shows the beginning of the man you were becoming, a man who leads through respect, a man who sees equality before difference, a man who keeps moving forward even when the road ahead is uncertain, a man whose purpose is not just to rise, but to lift others with him. This is the first true step toward the identity that would later define your journey. Morena, the one who stands with people, not above them.
The years we held together. A quiet note before the story turns. There is a part of my life that I will not open fully in this book, not because it is unimportant and not because it is forgotten, but because some memories are so deeply woven into who you are that to write them down feels like unthreading your own soul. After the border years, after the long letters and the waiting, there came a season in my life that was gentle and full. A season of choosing a future instead of surviving a present. Mariana and I got engaged. We planned our life the way young people do, with big dreams, small budgets, and hearts that believed anything was possible. We were married, and for 4 years we lived a simple, strong life. A life built not on drama or grand scenes, but on the quiet routines that make a home. Secunda became our place. Not perfect, not romantic in any storybook sense, just ours. A small house, a shared calendar, 2 paychecks stretched as far as they could go. Early mornings, suppers at the same table, laughter, arguments, learning, growing. A marriage built in the everyday things, the kind of life most people recognize, the kind that forms the roots beneath everything that follows. Then came Reynard, tiny hands, wide eyes, a miracle wrapped in vulnerability. Becoming parents changed us, made the ordinary feel meaningful, made the future feel urgent, made love feel larger than the two of us. Every holiday we drove to the Kalahari, to her parents' farm, to the red dunes that shaped her childhood. She belonged to that land, to the dust, the silence, the stars, and taking our son there felt like giving him a piece of his mother's heartbeat. Those years were short, but they were complete, beautiful in their simplicity, sacred in their normalness. The kind of years you don't notice while you're living them because they feel so effortless, and only later do you realize how much they held. I will not write a full chapter about our engagement, or our wedding, or our honeymoon, or the small moments that built our marriage. Those memories stay where they belong, inside me, untouched, still warm. But for the truth of this book, for the journey the reader is walking with me, it is important to know this. Before the night everything changed, there was love, there was a home, there was a family, there was a life we built together, one I treasured more than I ever said out loud, and that is enough.
Reflection. The quiet years that shape us. Those 6 years with Mariana were not a chapter of dramatic events. They were a chapter of foundations, the unseen building blocks of the man I would become. Looking back now, I realize something. The quiet years of our lives often carry more weight than the loud ones. We think our identity is forged in crises, in turning points, in the moments where everything collapses or changes. But often, identity grows in the soft spaces, in the routine, the partnership, the shared dreams, the invisible threads of daily love. Those years taught me what it meant to give, what it meant to belong, what it meant to build something with someone brick by brick, week by week, choice by choice. They formed the foundation that allowed me to survive what came next. Without those years, the grief would have destroyed me, because you cannot break open what has never been whole. Those years made me whole, and that was their purpose. And then, as life sometimes does, the road turned without warning. What follows next in this book is the story of the night the stars fell lower, the night everything changed, the night that shattered the life we built and forced my soul to begin again. This is where the next chapter begins.
The night the stars fell lower. A story of love, loss, and the moment a soul is forced to awaken. Reynard had just begun to pull himself upright, not walking yet, standing. That wobbly, determined rise every baby discovers when the world suddenly becomes more interesting above knee height than on the floor. He crawled into everything, drawers, cupboards, washing baskets, anything he could reach. His greatest joy was unpacking whatever his tiny hands could pull open, to his mother's endless frustration and her quiet amusement. He would turn one the following Monday. It was July, school holidays, and we were going back to the Kalahari, not to Secunda where we lived, but to the farm where Mariana grew up. Secunda was a house, The farm was her heartbeat. She longed for the red dunes, for the dry grass that whispered in the evenings, for those impossible night skies where the stars looked close enough to touch. She was glowing that week, planning Reynard's first birthday on the same land where she herself had learned to walk. Earlier that day she had phoned her parents one last time to finalise the arrangements for the holiday. The farm still used old-style manual telephones, the kind where you phoned a central switchboard and they connected you through to the house miles away. It felt like another world. We were excited. 3 weeks on the farm, 3 weeks of breathing differently. The Kalahari is at its best in winter, cold enough to feel honest but free from the brutal summer heat. There is a clarity in the winter air that makes everything sharper, the smell of dust, the shape of the dones, the echo of silence. The night we left. It was Mariana's idea to drive through the night. She packed Reynard's clothes neatly and said, "I think it's better if we travel after dark. He sleeps lightly during the day, but at night he'll sleep most of the way." She was right. She usually was. We knew the distance, about 1,200 kilometers, 12 hours. I told her, "If we leave at 11, I can sleep for a bit before we go. If I get tired on the road, you can take over." Friday night arrived, wrapped in excitement. Mariana spoke about the birthday cake she wanted to make for Reynard. She had bought all the decorations because you can't simply pop into town from her parents' farm. I checked the new blue Peugeot one last time, packed, fueled, ready. "We'll sleep in tracksuits," she said, "then we can just get up and go." Always practical, always thinking ahead. The alarm rang at 10 p.m. We stood up, stretched, made one last cup of coffee and stepped into the cold night. The Peugeot's headlights carved a path through the darkness, and the road opened in front of us, a long ribbon leading to the Kalahari, the place I couldn't wait to take my son into. I was a proud father, and for Mariana's parents, Reynard was the first grandchild. 6 hours in. We drove in silence for much of the night. Reynard slept lightly, so every sound felt like a risk. Just before the town of Schweizer-Reneke, after 6 hours on the road, the tiredness hit me hard. "I'm getting drowsy," I told Mariana quietly. "Let's stop outside the town, or if you want to drive, you can take over." She looked at Reynard, then back at me. He struggled to fall asleep earlier. "Let's stop for a bit and then go on." We pulled over just outside the town. I pushed my seat back and fell asleep instantly. I woke to a sudden roar, a big truck passing close enough to shake the car. Mariana touched my arm. "Let's drive to Vryburg," she said softly. "We can rest at the garage there, and by then it will be light, much easier." She was right. She usually was. The cold night air. I got out to smoke a cigarette. The Northern Cape winter cut straight through me, the kind of cold that shapes your breath into white mist. Mariana stood beside me. We looked through the window at Reynard, small, warm, wrapped in a blanket, lost in his dreams. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her. "Let's go," I said. "I want to get to the dunes. We need this holiday." She smiled. We got into the car. The moment everything changed. I was driving again. Vryburg wasn't far. The road hummed beneath us, steady, predictable, familiar. Then, a faint sound, gravel skittering under the tyres. The steering wheel felt strange, loose in my hands. For a second my mind floated between sleep and awareness. Then clarity returned in a violent flash. I was drifting off the tar. Instinct, panic. I pulled the wheel sharply. Too sharply. The world snapped. Then the car rolled. Glass exploded. Metal screamed. The night spun. My body lifted, thrown forward, pushed through the windscreen. Cold air hit me. Then earth. Then darkness. And then silence. Not the silence of night. A hollow, unnatural silence. I tried to move. Nothing. My legs were gone. Not severed, but unreachable, foreign, absent. "Mariana!" My voice cracked into the darkness. No answer. "Mariana!" Still nothing. Fear grew inside me, thick, suffocating. Voices appeared out of the dark. Footsteps, people running. Lights flickered across the veld. A man's voice cut through the cold air. This one didn't make it. The words tore through me. Which one? Who? Then, a cry. High, sharp, alive. Reynard. A baby! There's a baby here! Someone shouted. Another heavy silence fell. And I knew. Before the mind understood, the soul did. The one who didn't make it was Mariana. Something inside me shattered, then collapsed into a terrible quiet stillness. I tried to crawl toward the voices. Pain shot through me, but I dragged myself forward inch by inch. Someone reached me. "Don't move," he said gently. "You're badly hurt. Your little boy is fine, still wrapped in his blanket. Give us a number to call." I gave my parents' number. The pain arrived, slow, burning, distant. Everything inside me slowed. Thoughts vanished. My mind surrendered. A complete shutdown, drifting into a dark emptiness without fear, without understanding. Just nothing. Time stopped. The ambulance. Blue lights shimmered across the veld. They lifted me onto a stretcher, strapped me down, and loaded me into the ambulance. "You're okay," a medic said. "The hospital isn't far." As the ambulance pulled away, I turned my head slightly and saw her, Mariana, lying next to me. I reached out and touched her cheek. Soft, warm, beautiful. There was a small scratch above her nose, tiny, almost delicate. "Mariana," I whispered. "My love." No answer. And in that moment, painfully, undeniably, I knew. My wife. My partner. The mother of my son. The girl who smiled with her whole soul. Gone. One sentence formed inside me. This is my fault. My fault alone. The hospital. When I woke again, I was lying in a hospital bed. A woman I did not know stood beside me. "Chris," she said softly. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Reynard is fine. He's at our house on the farm. I'm watching over him. You were in an accident nearby. Try to relax. Your parents are on their way." I closed my eyes, and the silence inside me grew deeper. The longest silence. I woke slowly, as if rising through deep water. Nothing around me made sense. The ceiling was unfamiliar, too white, too still, and my body felt heavy, fogged by pain medication. Then memory struck. Sharp, cruel, unavoidable. The rolling car. The night sky turning upside down. The silence. Mariana. A coldness moved through me. A nurse stepped into the room. "Chris, you're awake," she said gently. "I'll call the doctor. He wanted to speak to you as soon as you opened your eyes." Her voice drifted around me without entering. Something inside me had shut down. My thoughts, my emotions, everything. I stared at the ceiling, unable to pull myself back into the world. The doctor's words. The doctor entered and placed his hand lightly on my arm. "Chris, I'm deeply sorry about Mariana. There are no words. Our whole team feels this loss with you." His voice sounded far away, as if it came from the end of a long tunnel. He continued, "You and your son were very fortunate. I examined your boy myself. Nothing broken, no internal injuries, just bruises. He'll recover quickly." A small flicker of relief touched me. Reynard was alive, safe, held. Then he shifted to my injuries. "You, however, have a clean pelvis fracture. The break is straight, no splinters, but it means you'll need to lie flat for a long time so the bone can heal properly. The cuts on your head and arms aren't deep and will heal soon. I've prescribed pain medication and something to help you rest." I tried to absorb his words, but they drifted above me like loose leaves in the wind. He said I was in good hands. Then he walked out, and an unnatural silence fell, a silence that would follow me for months, waiting for footsteps. I stared at the door. Any moment, people who loved me, and people whose daughter I had loved, would walk through it. My chest tightened, my breath caught, my throat dried. What would I say? How would I explain the unexplainable? The truth echoed relentlessly. I was driving. I fell asleep. I caused the accident. My fault. The words repeated themselves like a cruel mantra, and then the door opened. It was Upasaki, my father-in-law. He walked in quietly. His eyes were red and swollen, the kind of red that comes from hours of crying, not minutes. The kind of grief that belongs to a father who has lost a daughter he adored. Mariana wasn't just his child, she was his pride, the one who understood him, the one who could speak honestly when others held back. And now she was gone. He stood beside my bed and looked directly into my eyes. I tried to speak, to apologize, to take responsibility, but my voice cracked. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "You never have to forgive me. This is my fault." He lifted his hand gently. "Christian," he said in that familiar fatherly tone, "it's okay. You are my child too. You and Reynard are alive, and that is what I hold on to. It could have been so much worse." His forgiveness broke me open. I cried, deeply, helplessly, the kind of crying that comes from a place beyond thought. He let me cry. Then he said quietly, "I won't leave you here. It's too far from home. I'll be back soon. There are things I must arrange." Then he walked out, carrying a grief I had placed on his shoulders. My parents arrive. When I woke again, the light outside had dimmed. Dusk. The silence in the room felt heavier, darker, suffocating. Then the door opened. My mother rushed in first. She wrapped her arms around me and wept. She kept saying she was sorry, sorry for my pain, sorry for the loss, sorry for what no one could undo. My father stood a little behind her, quiet, composed, but with eyes full of sadness. He moved closer and placed his hand gently on the bandage on my head. "We were worried the entire night," he said. "When the phone rang, I knew something was wrong." When things settled, my mother told me softly, "We went to the farm first. Reynard is there. He's peaceful. The people are caring for him. The woman said she'll bake him a birthday cake. He's in good hands." For a moment, that small piece of news gave me enough strength to breathe. And then the door opened again. Arrangements. Upasaki walked in quietly. His presence filled the room, strong, steady, carrying pain with dignity. "Everything is arranged," he said softly. "We came with a bakkie. We'll take Mariana to Upington tomorrow. You'll go by ambulance to the hospital there." When I heard her name spoken aloud, my heart shattered again. Mariana, my wife, my love, to be placed on the back of a bakkie. It didn't feel fair. It didn't feel right. I broke down again, hard, uncontrollably. I would never hear her voice again, never smell her perfume, never hear her laugh echo through a room, never watch her walk toward me with that familiar softness. She was gone, gone forever, and I lay there unable to move, unable to reach her, unable to hold anything except the unbearable truth. Nothing felt real. Everything felt impossible. It was a dream I could not wake from. The inner world. What happens when everything is taken from you? There are moments in life when the world outside you goes quiet, but the world inside you goes even quieter. Not peaceful, not calm. A different kind of quiet. The quiet that comes when something breaks deep inside and the pieces haven't yet learned their new shape. Lying in that hospital bed, unable to move, unable to run from the truth, I felt the silence settle into me like a second heartbeat. It was as if my thoughts had stepped aside, my emotions had shut down, and something deeper, something older, rose to the surface. A part of me I had never met. At first there was only shock, a numbness so complete it felt like floating. The body had shut down, the mind had shut down, and the soul was waking up, but slowly, cautiously, like someone lighting a candle in a dark room. My first thoughts were not thoughts at all. They were fragments. How did this happen? Why? What do I do now? How do I face the people who loved her? Every belief I had built my life on, responsibility, strength, purpose, family, collapsed in one night. It felt as if the person I had been up to that moment had died alongside her, not physically, but spiritually. The old self did not survive the crash. My soul felt cracked open, raw, exposed, and for a time, nothing grew there. Only emptiness, a quiet so deep it frightened me. But in that emptiness, something else began to move. Slowly, like the first breath after drowning. It took time before I could name it, but looking back now, I know exactly what it was. The soul speaking for the first time. When everything external is stripped away, the roles, the identities, the hopes, the plans, the future you thought you were walking toward, you discover the one thing you cannot lose, the self that remains when everything else is gone. I didn't understand it then. I didn't have words for it. All I felt was a deep aching breaking inside me and a quiet voice rising through the cracks. It didn't speak in sentences. It didn't offer comfort. It offered truth. A truth I was not ready to hear. It said, "You cannot go back. You cannot undo this. You can only become someone new. And beneath that, you are not alone. You will not be destroyed by this. There is a purpose in your pain, even if you cannot see it yet." My mindset was fighting for survival. One part of me wanted to surrender, to sink into the darkness and disappear. Another part, a fragile, trembling part, fought to hold on to any thread of meaning. I felt both parts wrestling inside me, the part that blamed myself, the part that wanted to give up, the part that clung to Reynard, and the part that whispered, "Live, even if you don't know how." Some people think the soul speaks in grand moments, revelations, visions, flashes of light, but it doesn't. The soul speaks quietly, in brokenness, in surrender. In the spaces where you have nothing left to defend, it speaks when the mind finally stops running, when the heart has cried itself empty, when your identity has shattered and you have nothing left except the question, "Who am I now?" That was the inner world I lived in during those first days, a landscape of silence, pain, shame, loss, and something else rising through the ruins. Something small, something fragile, something holy. A beginning. The beginning of becoming someone new. The beginning of a different kind of strength. The beginning of a soul finding its voice. Because sometimes life breaks you open not to end you, but to reveal the part of you that was silent all along. When everything is taken from you, the soul speaks for the first time. The day they came for me. Grief, friendship, and learning to breathe again. Grief has a sound. It is not crying. It is not shouting. It is the sound of a hospital corridor at dawn, too quiet, too clean, too aware of suffering. It is the sound of people who speak softly because they know the world has shifted for someone behind a closed door. That morning, lying in my hospital bed, that was the sound I heard. And then I heard something else. Footsteps, voices, the murmur of people trying to find a room, trying to ask questions without breaking down. When the door finally opened, they filled the space in a way that almost made me forget why they were there. My friends from Secunda. Not one or two, a whole group. They had climbed into a combi and driven across half of South Africa to get to me, to stand in the gap, to bring the weight of their presence into a room where my world had collapsed. They greeted me gently, as if afraid I might break. They hugged me in long, wordless embraces. Their eyes said everything their mouths couldn't, and then came the truth they were too afraid to say aloud. They had not come only for me. They had come for her funeral. "We can't bury her without you," one of them finally whispered. For a moment something inside me twisted. A funeral, my wife's funeral. And I was lying flat, unable to stand, unable to sit, unable to walk, trapped inside a body that could no longer do the simplest things. "How am I supposed to go?" I asked. None of them answered immediately. Instead, something sparked between them, a determination that grew in the room like fire. "Then we'll take you," another said. Not "we'll try," not maybe, just "we will." What happened next still moves me. They walked straight to the hospital's senior staff and pleaded with them. They weren't angry, they were desperate. They explained who I was. They explained who Mariana was. They explained what it would mean to my soul if I stayed behind while they lowered her into the ground. They fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. Hours later, after enough conversations to fill a lifetime, a nurse came to my bedside and said, "They've agreed. We will release you temporarily. We'll help you into the combi." My friends removed the combi seats one by one until the whole floor was open. They layered it with blankets. They lifted me carefully, 4 men holding me as if I were made of glass, and placed me gently on the floor of the vehicle. I remember the smell of the blankets, the coldness of the floor beneath them, the way the engine vibrated through my spine. The road to the funeral felt endless. Inside the combi, no one spoke. No radio, no small talk, just a sacred silence, the kind that falls over people who know they are carrying something holy. At the funeral, they lifted me again, slowly, gently, and pouched me inside. I could not stand beside her coffin. I could not greet people properly. I could not hold Reynard. I lay there, staring upward as voices floated around me, blurred by grief. I remember people kneeling beside me, placing hands on my shoulders. I remember the sound of her mother's cries. I remember the weight of Upasaki's hand squeezing mine. And most of all, I remember the moment they carried her past me, the coffin holding the girl whose laugh once filled my home. A part of me broke again, then again, and again. But something else also happened that day. The first thread of acceptance entered my heart. Not peace, not healing, just acceptance. The first step toward both. Because lying there, unable to move, surrounded by people who loved her and who refused to leave me behind, I understood something. I was not forgotten. I was not alone. And although my life had shattered, there were still hands reaching into the ruins to pull me back. It was the smallest beginning of the long road forward. The long road back. Paris, paralysis, single fatherhood, and the seed of purpose. 2 weeks after the accident, the doctors finally discharged me. I couldn't walk, couldn't stand, couldn't lift Reynard. My father lifted me into the car, adjusted pillows around me, and drove slowly, carefully, as if carrying something infinitely precious. Back in Paris, the world felt slower, heavier, more fragile. My father bathed me because I couldn't stand in a shower. He held the cloth with a tenderness I had never seen in him before, a father caring for his son in a way that reversed time. My mother held Reynard everywhere she went, on her hip, on her lap, against her chest. She spoke to him in the gentle tone only grandmothers can carry. She fed him, bathed him, soothed him, filled in the spaces Mariana used to fill. I lay in bed for a month, looking at the ceiling, listening to the house, feeling my soul ache with every passing hour. Shame lived with me like a shadow. I couldn't walk. I couldn't hold my own child. I couldn't be the man I had promised Mariana I would be. But as the days passed, something else lived with me too. Grace. Every morning my father came to my room before sunrise to check if I needed anything. He didn't ask how I felt. He knew the answer. He simply sat with me. Sometimes we didn't speak at all. Those moments held me together. After a month, he found a wheelchair. The first time I sat in it, I felt exposed, as if the world would see my brokenness. But my father didn't see the chair. He saw me. "Let's get you outside," he said. He pushed me into the sunlight. I breathed fresh air for the first time in weeks. And for a moment, just a moment, something in me shifted. Maybe not everything was lost. I spent 2 months in that chair. 2 months of learning patience, 2 months of learning humility, 2 months of learning that healing is not only physical, it is deeply, painfully spiritual. Eventually, the day came when they said I could return to Secunda. Walking back into that house was like walking into a museum of a life that no longer existed. Her perfume still lingered on a scarf in the bedroom. Her handwriting was on a notepad beside the telephone. Her shoes stood neatly by the wardrobe, exactly where she had left them. Every room whispered her name. Uma Orpi, Mariana's mother, came to help me sort through Mariana's belongings, packing some into boxes, folding others into bags, deciding gently what should be kept and what could be passed on. One afternoon, she called out from the hallway, and her voice sounded so much like Mariana's that Reynard froze, his face lighting up, eyes wide with expectation. He crawled quickly toward the voice, searching eagerly. When he saw it wasn't her, something in him slumped. That moment carved a new kind of pain into me. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the silence, I realized I could not heal in this house. Not yet. Not like this. When she returned home, Reynard went to daycare while I went back to work. For weeks I pushed through exhaustion, grief, the demands of single fatherhood, but eventually I fell ill. Flu or exhaustion, or maybe the body surrendering to what the heart had carried alone for months. I phoned my mother. "Can Reynard stay with you for a while? I'll visit every weekend." She didn't hesitate. She simply said, "Bring him." With Reynard safe, the house in Secunda grew even quieter, heavy with memories I couldn't escape. The walls held her laughter, the kitchen held her presence, the bedroom held our life. And yet, out of that sadness, something unexpected began to grow. A thought, a whisper, a possibility. Perhaps I could study. Perhaps I could build a different life. Perhaps the future wasn't cancelled, only redirected. Then one day I remembered something Mariana had once said to me, long before the accident. "Chris, you're not made to be an artisan forever. You must study. I believe in you. One day people will look up to you, and Reynard will be proud." Those words became a flame inside me. They pushed me through the grief. They pushed me through the paralysis. They pushed me through the emptiness of that house. I told her back then, "It's not only me, it's us." Now it was us again, me and Reynard, walking a road she had unknowingly prepared for us. And then came the letter, the one that said I wasn't capable of studying engineering, the one that dismissed me with a sentence, the one that threatened to define my future. But instead of breaking me, it awakened me. Because on that day, with that letter in my hand, in a house filled with memories, with a broken pelvis, a broken heart, and a little boy who needed a father, I decided, no one will ever again decide for me who I'm allowed to become. Not pain, not loss, not a system, not a letter. No one. That was the turning point. The day I chose life. The day I forgave life. The day purpose found its way back into my bones. The day giving became the only path that made sense. The day my soul stepped into its calling.
Reflection. When loss becomes a beginning, there are chapters in a life that don't read like stories at all. They read like storms. This part of my life, the accident, Mariana's death, the paralysis, the funeral, the long recovery in Paris, the empty house in Secunda, the letter that told me I wasn't capable, is one of those storms. When I look back now, I don't only see tragedy, I see the birth of a different version of myself. On the surface, this is a story of loss. A young wife whose life ended too soon. A father lying flat on the floor of a combi at his own wife's funeral. A baby boy who would grow up without his mother. A man who went from walking to wheelchairs and bedpans in a single night. But underneath that, something else was happening. On the night the car rolled, the man I had been up to that point, the version of Chris who believed hard work and responsibility alone could control life, died with Mariana, not physically but in a deeper, invisible way. All the beliefs I had about how life should work collapsed. If I do things right, life will go right. If I love well, I will be protected from loss. If I am strong, I won't break. Those beliefs did not survive the crash. In their place, there was silence. In the hospital, on my back, staring at the ceiling, I discovered what it means when everything is taken from you. Not just what you have, but who you think you are. You discover that the soul, That quiet, deep part of you does not speak when everything is perfect. It speaks when everything falls apart. It speaks when your legs cannot carry you. It speaks when your hands cannot reach the coffin. It speaks when the letter says you are not capable. It speaks when shame and grief tell you to give up. And what it says is not always soft, but it is always true. You cannot go back. You cannot undo this. You can only become someone new. Through Upasaki's forgiveness, I learned that grace is real even when you don't deserve it. Through my parents' care, I learned that love can hold you when you cannot stand. Through my friends fighting to get me to the funeral, I learned that community is not a luxury, it is survival. Through watching Reynard search for a mother who wasn't coming back, I learned that my life was no longer my own. It was tied to a little boy who needed a father that chose to live. And through that letter that said I couldn't study, I learned one of the most important truths of my life. Other people's opinions are not my destiny. This storm became a turning point. It did not make me perfect. It did not remove the pain. Even today, the loss of Mariana is part of my story. But it did something else. It cracked me open so that purpose could find a way in. My decision to study, to grow, to change my life, to live as someone who gives rather than someone who hides, that decision was born out of this darkness. If you listen carefully to these stories, you will hear the pattern that shaped the rest of my life and my work as a life coach. Life will break your plans. Pain will challenge your identity. Loss will ask you who you really are, and in that place, you have a choice. Become bitter or become deeper. I chose slowly, painfully, imperfectly to become deeper, to give more, not less, to open my heart, not close it, to believe that every footprint, even the ones marked by tears, can still lead somewhere meaningful. The boy in the car that night did not know that. The man telling the story does. If there is one message I would want someone to take from this chapter in my life, it is this. You are stronger than the worst thing that ever happened to you. Your soul is bigger than your deepest loss. And even when everything is taken from you, there is still a part of you that can rise, rebuild, and walk again, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become.
The letter that nearly broke me. A story how a single sentence almost ended my life, and then saved it. Part 1. The Braai and the Breaking. There are evenings in a man's life that arrive looking ordinary, a braai with friends, laughter around a fire, a familiar rhythm, yet they end up splitting your world cleanly in two, before and after. That night at Danier and Lizette's house began like countless others. The men were outside around the fire, beers in hand, the smell of boerewors hanging in the cold Secunda air. The women were inside in the kitchen talking about babies, recipes, and the quiet details of their lives that made them feel connected to one another. We men mostly talked about work, politics, promotions, frustrations at Sasol, the kind of conversations that circled around the braai like smoke, never settling, never solving anything. It had become my normal, this life of half-belonging. A widower at 25. A father to a boy who slept 4 hours away with my parents in Paris. A man who drove home every weekend to hold the only piece of Mariana I still had. On standby weekends, like this one, I stayed in Secunda. And in those weekends, when the silence of the house felt too heavy, I accepted invitations like this one. An attempt by friends to make sure I didn't disappear completely into loneliness. I appreciated it, but I was not fully there. Not really. Secunda had become a kind of holding cell for me, safe, predictable, numbing. My work as a senior artisan was routine, unchallenging. My future was a thin, flat line, work hard, maybe become a foreman, earn a bit more, retire. A life without colour, without meaning, without the flame that Mariana had once lit in me. And although my friends cared, I never wanted to become a burden, the sad story in the room. So I laughed when they laughed, nodded when they nodded, pretended to be fine when inside I felt like a man watching life move past him from behind a window. After we ate, the women joined us outside. The fire crackled, flames rising in orange tongues. the kind of fire that usually brought warmth. Tonight it felt like a spotlight. Lisette, the head of training secretary and Danny's wife, walked toward me slowly. She touched my shoulder. Her hand trembled slightly. Something in her eyes told me this wasn't going to be small. "Chris," she said, "I want to tell you something, but you must promise me you won't take it personally or tell anyone I said it." The conversations around us softened, then faded. People sensed something was shifting. She took a breath. "You must stop applying for further studies." It hit me like a slap. Not anger, confusion. "I don't understand," I said. She swallowed hard, eyes dropping for a moment before she looked back at me. "I saw a letter on your personnel file. From your area engineer. It says you don't have the academic ability or potential for tertiary studies, so your applications will never be approved." Never. Not now. Not under consideration. Never. The word echoed inside me like a door slamming shut. She continued softly, I didn't want you getting hurt again and again. You're a good man, Chris. I'm so sorry." For a few seconds I couldn't speak. The fire cracked loudly beside us, the only sound in a sudden silence. And then I noticed something devastating. Everyone else already knew. Their eyes said it. Their silence said it. The way they looked at me with sympathy, the kind reserved for someone who doesn't yet know a truth about himself. A truth they believed. A truth I had never questioned. That I wasn't smart enough. Not educated enough. Not good enough. My chest tightened. My throat burned. For a second I thought I might cry, but the tears didn't come. They stayed somewhere deep behind the wall I had built since losing Mariana. "Thank you, Lisette," I managed to say. "I appreciate your honesty." The words were polite, controlled, a mask. But inside, something cracked open, something raw and painful that I had carried since childhood. The belief that I didn't belong among educated people, that I was destined for the practical work my father had predicted, that books and degrees were for other families, not mine, not me. I gathered my things slowly, not wanting to make a scene. I shook hands, forced a smile, thanked everyone for the evening, even though the fire now felt like it was burning a hole through me. When I got to my motorcycle, something inside me felt dark, heavy, untethered, a pressure without shape, a sorrow without sound. I put on my helmet. The world inside it felt small and airless, like my future. I started the engine to life. The rumble vibrated through my body. For years, riding had been my escape, the place where speed washed pain clean for a few minutes. But that night, I didn't want escape. I wanted silence, and reasons, and answers that refused to come. Secunda's dim streetlights streaked past as I rode. My grief felt like a second skin, tight, suffocating. Every loss I had ever carried seemed to rise at once. The school I never chose, the labels given to me, the humiliation of childhood moments, the army, the accident, the day Mariana died, her empty side of the bed, the life we should have had, the life I now lived without her, the child I loved but only saw on weekends. And now this letter, a stranger's sentence deciding the rest of my life. Why me? The thought repeated like a drum. Why always me? The pressure grew until I could hardly breathe. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to stop the spinning inside me. So I pulled over at the small dam outside Secunda, the place where I sometimes went when the pain of missing Mariana became too much. The water was still. The night was cold. The town lights glimmered faintly in the distance. I sat on the grass, elbows on my knees, staring at the water. It stared back without mercy. And there, in the quiet, a terrible thought entered me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I will never be more than this. Maybe I am exactly what that letter says. I felt myself collapsing inward, not physically, but emotionally, spiraling. For the first time in my life, the thought of living felt heavier than the thought of dying. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. A dark, dangerous determination rose up like a wave. I am going to end this. Part 2. The ride, the darkness, and the dam break. Something inside me went quiet, not calm, not peaceful, but frighteningly still. It was the kind of stillness a man feels when he moves past pain, past anger, past confusion, into a place where nothing matters anymore. Not career, not reputation, not future, not even breath. I slowly stood up from the grass beside the dam, walked to my motorcycle and swung my leg over the seat with a numbness that scared me only in hindsight. In that moment, nothing scared me. That was the danger. The helmet felt heavy on my head. My breath inside it sounded far away. The cold night air wrapped around me as if it was waiting. I started the bike. The engine growled to life, a familiar friend in a moment where I felt utterly alone. But tonight I wasn't riding to escape. I was riding to disappear. I opened the throttle harder than I ever had. The bike leapt forward, tyres biting into the tar, the engine screaming as if it knew what I was planning. The wind tore at my jacket. The streetlights blurred. My vision tunneled until all I could see was the dark road ahead of me, long, straight, merciless. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't shaking. I was empty. And in that emptiness came a thought, quiet but cold. Just a little faster, just a little longer, just let go. I headed toward the Evander Road, where the big coal trucks hauled their loads at night. Heavy, slow, unstoppable machines, the kind of machines a man wouldn't survive hitting. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon, almost inviting me. My grief had become unbearable. The humiliations, the loneliness, the weight of Mariana's death, the ache of not raising my own son full time, the truth spoken around a braai by someone who meant well, but didn't realize she was breaking open every wound I had ever carried. I felt the pain tightening inside me until it wasn't pain anymore. It was despair. And despair, when it hardens, becomes dangerous. 1 second, I told myself. 1 moment of courage, or cowardice. And it will all be quiet. The trucks appeared ahead, their headlights bright, their engines humming down the highway. A soft voice inside me whispered, "Now." I leaned forward, gripping the handlebars. I aimed the bike slightly toward the oncoming lights. My chest tightened, my breath caught, and for a terrifying heartbeat I surrendered to the thought, just do it, end it, enough. The bike surged forward beneath me, the engine roaring like it shared my despair. The lights of the truck grew brighter, larger, swallowing the darkness around them. The road narrowed. My pulse pounded. The edge approached. But then something happened. Something small. Something simple. Something that pulled me back into life at the last possible second. I saw a chevron sign. A bright reflective arrow directly ahead, glowing in my headlamp like a warning sent from somewhere beyond my understanding. A flash of instinct, maybe survival, maybe fear, maybe grace, shot through me. I jerked the handlebars. The bike swerved, the tires skidded, the world tilted, and suddenly I wasn't on the road anymore. I was flying, over gravel, over grass, over small stones that sliced into my skin. I hit the ground hard. Pain exploded through my body. Sharp, hot, immediate. The bike crashed beside me, metal crunching, lights flickering, then dying. Silence. The truck thundered past in the distance, oblivious to how close I had come to disappearing under its wheels. I lay there in the veld, scratched, bruised, wind knocked out of me. But alive. Alive. The cold night air stung my cuts. My hands trembled. My heart hammered back into my chest as if it had been dead and suddenly remembered its job. What had I almost done? What moment had I come within breath of losing myself? What story would Reynard grow up hearing? I sat up slowly, staring at the damaged bike lying on its side. My legs felt weak. My vision blurred. But the real shock came from inside. I tried to die tonight. Not by mistake. Not by accident. but by intention. And the truth of that hit me so hard that for the first time in a long time I cried. Not loud, not dramatically, just tears, quiet, stunned, ashamed, human. It felt like something was being torn out of me, something dark, something heavy, something that had been building for years. When I finally stood up, the world felt different, not lighter, but clearer. I dusted myself off. Blood trickled down my arm. My shirt was torn. My knee was throbbing. But I was standing, alive. I lifted the bike. It was bent, scraped, half broken, much like I felt, but it still started. I climbed on, shaking, and headed home slowly this time. Every kilometre felt like a confession. You almost didn't make it. You almost ended the story before the story even started. When I got home, the house felt unbearably quiet. Mariana's memory lived in every corner. Her laughter still echoed in the walls. Our dreams still whispered in the rooms. I stood in the shower until the water ran cold, washed the dirt off, washed the blood off. But I couldn't wash off the truth of what I had almost done. I sat down in the dim lounge, wrapped in a towel, staring at nothing. My life felt like it had been stripped down to raw bone. And then, in that painful, broken silence, something happened. Something small, something gentle, something powerful enough to change the entire course of my future. A thought, a whisper, a voice from deep inside me, not angry, not desperate, but firm. No one will ever again tell me who I am or what I am capable of. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't loud, it was truth. Something shifted in my soul, a flicker of fire where moments before there had only been darkness. A decision began forming, a new story, a different destiny. Part 3, the awakening, the decision and the new life. The lounge was dark except for the faint orange glow coming from the street lamp outside. The air smelled of Secunda factory gases and old dreams. I sat there for a long time, elbows on my knees, hands clasped together, staring at the tiled floor as if the answers might be hidden between the cracks. A few hours earlier, I had almost ended my life. Now I sat there breathing, slow, deliberate breaths that felt like a second chance. My skin burned where the gravel had scraped me, my ribs ached, my head throbbed with the weight of everything that had happened. But underneath the pain, something else stirred, a determination I had never felt before. It was as if the part of me that had been silent, the part that had always wanted more, believed more, hoped more, finally woke up and said, "Enough. This is not where your story ends." I leaned back into the couch and closed my eyes. Mariana's face came to me instantly, soft hair, gentle eyes, the way she used to laugh when I tried to explain something too seriously. Her absence still lived in me like a wound that refused to close. "Would you be proud of me now?" I whispered into the empty room. Silence answered. Not the silence of loneliness, the silence of truth. I realized something important that night. I wasn't fighting a job. I wasn't fighting Sasol. I wasn't fighting the engineer who wrote that letter. I wasn't even fighting the grief of losing Mariana. I was fighting the old story inside me, the story that had followed me since childhood. You are not good enough. It was planted in small humiliations, in wrong schools, in careless words, in disappointments, in moments where adults saw my circumstances instead of my potential. And that letter, that single sentence claiming I didn't have academic ability, had cracked open every old wound at once. But now another thought formed inside me. What if the letter wasn't the truth? What if it was only someone else's opinion, and I had the right to prove them wrong? That thought grew. It took root in my chest. It warmed me. And slowly it became a decision so strong that I stood up from the couch as if someone had called my name. I walked to my small desk, the same desk where Mariana once sat brushing her hair, legs crossed, teasing me about how long I took to get ready. I pulled an application form, Vol Triangle Technicon, from the drawer. My hands were still shaking. I didn't know what course I would do. I didn't know how I would afford it. I didn't know how I would manage being a single father, a grieving young widower, and a student all at once. But I knew this. I was going to rise. I was going to reclaim my life. I was going to rewrite the story they had written for me. I sat there for hours completing the form, scratching out mistakes, rewriting sentences, double-checking every detail. When it was done, I placed the completed application carefully inside an envelope and wrote the address in neat block letters. Then I placed the envelope on my kitchen counter, a small, simple object that held an entire new future inside it. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. My body hurt, but my spirit felt alive, fragile, but alive. I walked into work with a strange sense of clarity. People greeted me, I greeted them back. Nobody knew what had happened the night before. Nobody knew how close I had come to being a memory. Only I knew, and that was enough to change everything. At lunch, I drove directly to the post office. My heart thudded in my chest as I stood in line. When it was my turn, I placed the envelope on the counter as though I was placing a piece of my soul there. "Registered mail, please," I said. I watched as the clerk stamped it, weighed it, and dropped it into the slot behind her. It was gone, sent, released. The moment the envelope disappeared from sight, something incredible washed over me. Relief, freedom, a quiet, fierce pride. It didn't matter what the engineer had written. It didn't matter who believed in me or who didn't. It didn't matter where I had come from or how many battles I had already fought. What mattered was that I had chosen myself. Weeks passed. I said nothing to anyone except my closest friends, Keeney and Magda, people whose belief in me had always been steady. At night, after long shifts, I would lie awake imagining a new life. Books, lectures, classmates, ideas, opportunities. A life where my mind mattered. A life where my potential had room to breathe. A life where Reynard could one day look at me and say, "Daddy didn't give up." Then, one quiet afternoon in November, my mother called. Her voice shook, not with worry, but with joy. "Christy, your application is successful. You're in. January 15th, you register." I sat down slowly on my bed. A laugh escaped me, soft and disbelieving. A warmth spread through me that felt like light. I had done it, against the odds, against the letter, against the story they wrote about me. I had done it. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Mariana, I hope you're proud." In the weeks that followed, I sold my house back to Sasol, packed my belongings, and took them to my parents' home in Paris. It felt strange, like the closing of a long, difficult chapter, but it also felt right. That small Free State town would become my new home for the next 4 years, a place of growth, healing, discovery, and transformation. A place where I would finally become the man I was meant to be. A place where the letter that nearly broke me became the fire that rebuilt me.
Reflection. The night my story. Change direction. There are moments in life that look ordinary from the outside. A braai, a conversation, a sentence said too casually, but inside you, they trigger an earthquake. That night was one of them, not because of the letter itself, but because of what it represented. Every old wound, every childhood belief, every buried fear, every unspoken grief, every limit I ever accepted. When the pain reached its breaking point, something inside me finally rebelled, not in anger, but in awakening. In that moment, I learned perhaps the most important truth of my life. You will never rise until you refuse to believe the story others write about you. Pain broke me open. Despair revealed my truth. And in the darkness beside that quiet dam, my soul whispered a sentence that would shape the rest of my life. Never again will anyone tell you what you can or cannot become. That night did not destroy me. It rebuilt me. Because sometimes the hardest moments, the ones we barely survive, are the ones that finally introduce us to who we really are. And from that night onward, I carried a new belief. My past may shape me, but my choices define me, and I chose to rise, Epilogue, Chapter 6, The Moment. Everything changed. There are moments in a human life that split the timeline into two parts, before and after. Chapter 6 is my after, the moment when an old mindset died so that a new one could rise. Nothing shapes a mindset more profoundly than loss. Loss strips away every illusion of control. It forces you to meet the rawest version of yourself, your fears, your beliefs, your wounds, your strength, and your purpose. In this chapter, 3 things happen to my mindset. 1. The collapse of the old self. Before the accident, my mindset stood on 3 pillars: responsibility, hard work, the belief that effort protects you from tragedy. When Mariana died, all 3 pillars collapsed. The subconscious rule I had lived by, if I do everything right, life will go right, shattered. This was the first stage of my mindset transformation, the breaking of the old narrative. I learned that you cannot build a new life on beliefs that no longer match reality. 2. The awakening of the soul. In the silence of the hospital bed, another part of me awakened, a deeper part, the voice of my soul. It spoke through the forgiveness of Opa Saki, the love of my parents, the loyalty of friends who refused to leave me behind, the instinct that pulled me back from ending my life, the quiet thought that whispered, "You are not done, not yet." That was the birth of a new narrative. My pain does not decide my worth. My future can still expand. This was the second stage of my mindset development. The soul speaks when the mind is too broken to lead. 3. The rebuilding of purpose. Purpose did not return in a dramatic moment. It returned slowly, painfully, through ordinary moments. Reynard looking for a mother who wasn't coming. The shame of needing help. The quiet dignity of recovery. The memory of Mariana saying, "Chris, you must study." The fire lit by a single insult in a letter. The determination that rose beside my broken motorcycle. Purpose returned not because life became easier, but because I made a choice. No one will ever again decide for me who I am allowed to become. This was the third stage of mindset development, the new narrative becoming a vow to rise, a vow to rebuild, a vow to give more than life took, a vow to walk forward even when my knees shook. The mindset that emerged. From the ruins of Chapter 6, a new mindset was formed, the same one that guides my life and my coaching today. Loss can break me open or break me down. I choose which. Purpose is not found, it is forged. No letter, no label, no person decides my potential. Pain is not the end of the story, it is the teacher that introduces me to my soul. I cannot always choose my trauma, but I can always choose my becoming. This chapter marks the intersection between mindset and soul. My mindset became the structure of my thoughts and beliefs. My soul became the inner voice that told me what truly mattered. In Chapter 6, they met, painfully, violently, and beautifully, and together they created the man who would rise from Secunda's darkness into a life of purpose, giving, and transformation. My soul evolved, my mindset matured, my purpose revealed itself. This is the chapter that birthed the rest of my life.